We live in a society that hosts an unobtainable ideal for people's appearance. We focus on the person's outer beauty to determine their worth. In an era of fad diets, extreme shapewear, and weight loss tips and tricks being exposed to us at every turn, when do we acknowledge the harm and wrongdoings that have been thrust upon us? My name is Crystal Hidlebaugh, and today I will be speaking with you about a topic that is prevalent in our society, but especially in the theater and film industry: fatphobia. Fatphobia in theater and film is holding back society from reaching the potential of full inclusivity. With the utilization of fat suits, casting larger actors in traditionally stock comedy characters, and the discrimination around casting large actors, society has dissociated from theater audiences. It reflects an unrealistic ideal society that is disjunct from our reality. By casting larger actors in non-stereotypical roles, the theater and film industry will continue to break the barriers between actors with obesity and straight-size actors. A few words will be used throughout this presentation, which not all of my audience members will be familiar with. I find it important to acknowledge not only the words that will be used, but to acknowledge the level of oppression that is associated with these terms. Fatphobia is a phenomenon of fear and dislike of obese people and obesity, whereas sizeism is a social construct of being prejudiced or discriminatory on the grounds of a person's size. Each of these terms are social constructs that have been ingrained so deeply into our society that we don't always realize that they exist, let alone have a proper name. So how did fatphobia in the theater and film industry originate? In the times of ancient Greece, it was important that playwrights were producing something new for their audiences in a very short period of time. This in turn led to the creation of stock characters. Masters, lovers, and servants are the categories of traditional stock characters. Each of these characters holds a different distinction which differentiates them from other character types. Typical servant characters, commonly known as mom and pop characters or nurses, are supporting characters, often played by larger actors. The lovers tend to be young and naive, while the servants are considered idiotic for comedic purposes. For some, these words correlate to thin and fat, respectively. Playwrights at that time did not seem to understand personalities. They focused heavily on their characters' appearance to create stories inside of their plays. The notion of stock characters bled into commedia dell'arte, where each of the characters were further thrust into stereotypical body types. These characters were intended for comedic purposes, tend to walk where they hold their weight, deeming them as undesirable yet funny characters. These types of character distinctions led to the notion of slapstick comedy. Slapstick comedy is commonly seen as actions that an actor does which induced laughter from their audience, which include getting oneself stuck in a small space due to the girth of their body. Their genre of comedy isn't witty. It is pointed at the weight of the character who is being portrayed. This kind of phenomenon has been undesirably labeled as fatertainment. While larger actors know what it's like to have their weight used as a tool to create comedy. The character from Fat Amy from Pitch Perfect is one example. This character is often seen eating unhealthy foods and at one point strives to avoid exercising so much that she creates a new workout altogether: horizontal running, also known as laying on the ground and flailing her legs about. While the character's funny, most of the humor is pointed at her weight. Rebel Wilson, who plays Fat Amy, has even made the comment to the fact that she once felt too thin to do comedy and felt the need to gain weight to be competitive in the industry. In opposition to the notion that there are actors who are willing to pack on the pounds for the comedic art, there are still casting directors who would rather have a thin actor portray a fat actor by putting them in a fat suit. Why not just cast fat actors? The excuse is that these straight-size actors have a more prosperous time in the marketing of production and the appearing on the red carpet for movies than a person with obesity. These seemingly diverse actors can make a considerable body change between one character and the next in a matter of minutes on stage or screen, where an actor who genuinely has fat would require months of dieting and exercise, which would hold back production, not to mention the critical health issues that could ensue. Fat suits are a newer technology which aid in changing the appearance of straight-size actors. The issue with fat suits is that these characters, when they are thin, tend to have ambition or goals, often a romantic relationship. But when a fat suit is applied, all ambition goes away. The character becomes undesirable, depressed, and turns to food or other unhealthy habits. Gaining weight is seen as a negative thing in the film industry. This stems from the notion that American societies view fat people or obese people as lazy or stupid based solely on the size of their body. Weight is a symbol that the character is no longer thriving and their thin self needs to return in order for the character to return to normal, to be desirable once again, and to continue living a successful life. All of the images shown here are examples of straight-size actors who have worn fat suits to add to the humor of their shows. One example of this is the Marvel movie Endgame, where Thor has lost all sense of purpose, so he's seen chugging beer and stuffing his face with unhealthy foods. He is now living a life of despair rather than thriving like when he was thin and athletic. The issues with fat suits are also apparent in the Netflix show Insatiable. Shows like Insatiable, starring Debbie Ryan, have created controversy because audiences were expecting the series to be portraying the life of a girl with obesity, who doesn't focus solely on her weight, but who is still struggling with herself. The character was supposed to have substance and purpose rather than the storyline focusing on a weight loss journey. The trailers for the show falsely portray a progressive story about the acceptance of people with obesity. Instead, the show turned the character into the butt of the joke when she is unfortunately punched by a homeless man who breaks her jaw, leading to her drastic weight loss. Insatiable only portrayed the fat girl for a total of 1 episode before they took off the fat suit to show the beautifully slim Ryan, whose character is now the spotlight of her high school, pursuing a career as a pageant queen and living the life of a screenwriter seem to only think is obtainable for a thin person to achieve. By exposing young audiences and audiences with obesity to this kind of topic matter, the decrease in self-confidence is inevitable. While these communities have representation on screen initially, the character quickly shifted from a progressive character with obesity who does not focus on her weight to a character who is centered around appearance. Mary Anderson, author of When Will Fat Suits Go the Way of Blackface, states that the utilization of fat suits on screen or on stage holds the same moral implication as when a white actor would use blackface. The notion behind blackface was pioneered in the 20th century for comedy, in which white people were intrigued by, yet at the same time revolted by black people, so they insisted upon ways to instigate them. These white actors adorn the skin color of a person outside of their own race, forcing a group of people who were not previously marginalized into the category of a marginalized group. The notion of fat suits holds the same moral implications. When a thin actor adorns a fat suit, they are given the liberty to portray themselves in a way in which they are radically different from themselves. These fat suits do not provide accurate representation of the fat community. These actors are allowed to remove these fat suits at the end of their time on set or in rehearsal, so they cannot fully immerse themselves in the reality of living a life as an individual with obesity. Studies have shown that fat suits do not replicate the human emotion of an individual with obesity. Emotional reactions to facing ridicule and humiliation are not genuine from a thin actor. This leads to the notion that these actors themselves are poking fun at their peers because they can easily brush off the criticism the same way they can brush off the weight. At the end of the day, these actors can remove the source of their humiliation and proceed with their daily routines as normal. In the film industry, it is popular to create a piece of art that is based on a real-life person. Casting directors and writers alike need to see the harm of the habit of slimming down these real-life people so they can appear more desirable on screen. In recent years, there have been an abundance of screen portrayals of real-life people, including Hulu's original series, The Act, which stars Patricia Arquette as the decidedly thin Dee Dee Blanchard, the mother of Mauthausen by proxy victim Gypsy Rose Blanchard. The notion of honesty on stage or on screen is lost. While these productions can be beautifully composed, they are missing the elements of being genuine to the true story. Part of the real-life people's story is their size, regardless of how pertinent screenwriters view their weight. Casting directors and screenwriters hold the power to invoke change not only in the film industry, but in the society as well. Representation of all different body types with personalities is required to make significant shifts in the perception of individuals with obesity in our society. The notion of slimming down character portrayals is demeaning to audience members who have obesity. With an inaccurate depiction of society being displayed on stage, it becomes clear that there is a distinction between characters and their heavier counterparts. One example of the difference between thin characters and characters with obesity is in the sitcom Friends. The widely popular Fat Monica persona is insulting due to the use of the fat suit, the constant snacking, and the portrayal of this character as pathetic, whereas her thin self is seen as attractive and lovable. By constantly portraying individuals with obesity in a negative light, we are unknowingly telling these individuals that they don't have the same worth as someone who is much thinner. In a world where there is such a lack of representation, awareness needs to be raised about the wrongdoings that have taken place in the world of film and theater. It is important for the theater and film communities to recognize these issues so that we will know how to prevent them from happening in the future. Advocate for large, non-stereotypical actors. All bodies have worth regardless of their shape and their size. We have the power to stop fat phobia and sizeism and evoke change in American societies. Thank you.